I didn't realize my entire life was about to collapse until a man I had never seen before sat down beside me in that dimly lit cafe, close enough that I felt the faint warmth of his shoulder and the quiet tension in his breathing, and told me something that didn't feel real at first, something so sharp and sudden it sliced every thought in my head clean through. Your partner is cheating. No introduction, no warm-up, no hesitation. Just that brutal, heavy sentence dropped in my lap like a stone meant to sink me instantly. I stared at him because that was the only thing my body could do. He had this calm, controlled way of holding himself, like he had been preparing to say these words for a long time, like he had been building up to this moment through rage, sadness, exhaustion, and now he had finally reached the point where the truth didn't hurt him anymore. The cafe noise faded into static. The people around us blurred. He slid his phone across the table with slow, deliberate fingers because he already knew what my reaction would be. Already knew the way my chest would tighten and my stomach would twist and my heartbeat would stutter when I saw the photo on that screen. And I did. My partner, my person, my world, wrapped around someone else, their body language intimate, their faces close, their expressions familiar in a way that made my vision vibrate, because I had seen that tenderness before, years ago, back when things were simple, and I believed that loyalty was something permanent instead of something fragile and easily replaced. I felt my throat go numb. The stranger, Marcus, spoke again, telling me he'd suspected his partner for months, explaining how the late nights didn't add up, how the excuses didn't make sense, how the affection had drained from their relationship like water leaking from a cracked glass. He told me he'd hired someone to follow her, track her, gather evidence because he was tired of being the one who didn't know, the one who was left in the dark while someone else made decisions that affected the both of them. And in the process of uncovering her secrets, he found mine. Or rather, he found what my partner was doing behind my back. He said my name quietly, said it like he had practiced, like he wanted to ease the blow but also needed me to hear it clearly, then said the part that cracked something open inside me. You deserve to know. I'm telling you because you deserve the truth. I didn't know whether to thank him or scream or run. My thoughts tangled together like wires sparking, and the only thing I managed to say was a barely audible, "Why me? Why tell me?" He shrugged slightly, shoulders tight with unresolved anger. "Because I've been living in the dark long enough," he said, "and I'm done letting someone else control the narrative of my life." He leaned in closer until I could see the faint lines of exhaustion around his eyes, until I could feel the intensity behind his controlled exterior, and said something even stranger. "Forget them. Come out with me tonight." For a second I thought he was joking or unhinged or grieving in a way that collapsed into impulse, but he wasn't any of those things. He was deadly serious, painfully serious, the kind of serious that comes from betrayal carving through your life until you don't care about being polite or predictable anymore. And the worst part? I said yes, instantly, without hesitation, without logic, without protecting myself. I said yes because something primal in me snapped at the confirmation that the uneasiness I'd been ignoring for months hadn't been paranoia or insecurity or overthinking. It had been truth clawing at the edges of my awareness, begging me to pay attention. I said yes because I was tired of being lied to, tired of being dismissed, tired of pretending things were fine when they were rotting beneath the surface. Marcus gave me a time and an address. Then he stood, nodded once, like this was a business transaction sealed, and walked out without waiting for my reaction. I sat there long after he left, staring at nothing, trying to feel something, anything. But my emotions had retreated somewhere far away, leaving my body cold and eerily calm. I checked my partner's location because I needed proof beyond the phone screen. The little dot hovered miles away in a neighborhood I didn't recognize. Nowhere near work. Nowhere near anything that made sense. that was the moment denial died. Not violently, quietly, like a candle finally extinguishing after flickering for too long. I drove home in a haze, every streetlight blurring into another, the world feeling dreamlike and heavy, like everything was happening underwater. When I opened the front door, the house felt wrong. Not because anything had changed, but because I had changed. I walked through the rooms like a stranger inspecting a life that didn't belong to me. I found the small things that didn't fit, the misplaced receipts, the unfamiliar scents, the clothes that weren't mine, the messages I somehow missed or dismissed. It was all there. The evidence was everywhere, woven into the edges of my life, like mold spreading quietly where nobody looks. I didn't cry. Not then. I think some part of me had expected this for so long that the confirmation didn't devastate me the way betrayal is supposed to. Instead, it numbed me in a way that felt almost peaceful, like the war in my head had finally chosen a side and stopped burning itself alive in the process. I showered. I changed. I looked at myself in the mirror until I felt like I was inhabiting my own skin again. Then I left. Not to run, not to hide, not to chase after answers from someone who had been feeding me lies with the casual confidence of a seasoned actor. I left because Marcus had offered me a way out, not a romantic one, not a reckless one, not even a righteous one, just an exit from the suffocating silence of pretending everything was okay. When I walked into the quiet bar where he told me to meet him, he looked at me like he had genuinely doubted I'd show. Relief washed over his expression before he hid it, before he masked it behind that careful, wounded composure. We talked for hours, not about romance or attraction or any childish fantasy. We talked about the ways betrayal reshapes a person, how it hollows you, how it forces you to reevaluate every memory, every conversation, every smile you once believed was real. Marcus told me the things he had found out, the nights he lay awake piecing together clues, the moment he realized he couldn't stay silent anymore. I told him the things I hadn't told anyone, the ways I'd felt myself disappearing in my own relationship, the way I blamed myself for someone else's choices. He didn't judge, didn't pry, didn't pity me. He just listened in a way that felt unfamiliar and grounding. When he asked if I wanted to leave the bar and walk, I agreed. The city felt cold and open around us. Streetlights glowed. Cars passed. Everything was normal except for the two of us, drifting through this strange shared moment. And then he stopped walking, looked at me the way someone looks when they're fighting an internal battle they've already lost, and asked quietly, "Can I kiss you?" I should have said no. I should have been noble or moral or respectable. But betrayal kills morals long before it kills anything else, and something inside me leaned toward him like I didn't have control anymore. I said yes. He kissed me slow and deliberate, like someone who knew the taste of heartbreak and recognized it in me. When he pulled back, my world felt different, not lighter, not healed, just rearranged into something I couldn't go back from. For the first time in months, I felt alive. Not happy, not fixed, just alive. And that was enough to change everything. The morning after Marcus kissed me felt unreal, in a way that scared me, because everything should have felt dirty or wrong or terrifying, but instead it felt like stepping into sunlight after months trapped in a room with no windows. I woke up earlier than usual, not because of anxiety, but because my body felt wired, like it knew something had shifted overnight and wasn't ready to ease back into the routine of pretending. My partner was already gone, of course. They always left early on days where they had somewhere to be that didn't involve me. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked around the room at the life I'd been clinging to out of habit and fear and obligation, and wondered how long I'd been keeping myself trapped in something that stopped nurturing me a long time ago. My phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. "Are you all right?" 2 words that shouldn't have meant much, but they did, because he wasn't asking to manipulate or to guilt me or to redirect blame. He was asking because he understood exactly what waking up after betrayal felt like. I didn't reply right away. I walked to the bathroom, stared at my reflection under the harsh vanity lights, and tried to recognize the person staring back. I saw exhaustion, yes, but also clarity, sharper edges, something like awakening. After a moment, I typed back, "I don't know yet." He responded within seconds, "Do you want to talk?" I didn't. Not because of him, but because I needed to face something else first. I needed to confront the life I'd been rehearsing every day with someone who hadn't valued me in months. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the steam rising from the mug, thinking about all the mornings I'd sat there feeling alone while pretending not to, all the times I'd justified the emotional distance, all the excuses I'd made for someone who didn't deserve them. The front door finally opened. My partner walked in, smelled like the outside air and their favorite perfume that wasn't mine, and gave me the same tired half smile they'd been giving me for months. The one that said nothing. The one that meant nothing. "You're up early," they said, shrugging off their jacket. "Couldn't sleep," I replied, my voice calm in a way that surprised both of us. They didn't notice anything was off. Of course they didn't. People who treat others like placeholders rarely notice when the placeholder stops holding space. "I'm heading out again tonight," they said casually, as if they weren't announcing another lie. "Work stuff." "Right," I said. I didn't ask questions. I didn't try to fight. I just watched them move through the kitchen like a stranger passing through a place they no longer cared about. When they left, I didn't feel the usual sting of abandonment. I felt relief, honest, deep relief. I texted Marcus, "Can we meet?" He sent the address immediately. Not a bar, not a lounge. A quiet park near the water. Neutral ground. I drove there feeling oddly steady, like everything inside me had reorganized overnight into something functional, something brave, something I didn't know I still had. Marcus was sitting on a bench with his elbows on his knees, staring at the water like it had answers he hadn't unlocked yet. He looked up when he heard my footsteps, and the look in his eyes wasn't predatory or smug. It was recognition. "Rough morning?" he asked. "Just a morning," I said, sitting beside him. The silence between us wasn't awkward. It wasn't heavy. It was understanding. The kind of silence where two people don't need to pretend. "Did you confront them?" he asked. "Not yet," I said. "I saw them. They lied. I didn't correct them." "You will," he said. "Well, when you're ready." I laughed weakly. "You sound so confident." "I am," he said simply. "People like us. We don't stay quiet once we see the truth. It's impossible." I looked at the water, watched the way, the sunlight fractured across the surface, and exhaled. "Everything feels unreal," I said, "like I'm moving through someone else's life." "That's because you've been living someone else's reality," Marcus said. "Now you're finally stepping into your own." The words hit harder than I expected. We talked for a long time, longer than I intended, but every time I thought I was ready to leave, he asked something that cut deeper than surface-level conversation. "When did you stop feeling loved? When did you start blaming yourself for their distance? When did you start disappearing from your own life?" Each question peeled a layer I'd been ignoring for months. I confessed things I hadn't admitted aloud. How small I'd been making myself, how careful I'd been with my feelings, how guilty I'd felt any time I wanted something more, something better. Marcus listened with a stillness that made it easy to keep talking. Eventually he said, "You know this relationship is over." "Yeah," I admitted. "I think it's been over for a long time." "Then you need to end it," he said. "Not for me, not for revenge, not because you kissed me, but because staying is killing something in you that deserves to live." His directness should have annoyed me, but it didn't. He wasn't trying to control me. He was trying to shake me awake, and he was right. That afternoon, I drove home with a heavy but determined heart. My partner wasn't there. Of course they weren't. They were somewhere else, doing something with someone they didn't have to lie to. I gathered my things, slowly, deliberately, silently, not dramatically, not impulsively, just truthfully. I packed the clothes that were mine, the sentimental items that mattered, the things that held pieces of a life worth keeping. When I was almost done, my partner finally called. I let it ring, then ring again, then again. I didn't answer. When they came home hours later, they found me zipping up the last bag. Their eyes widened. "What are you doing?" they asked, voice cracking. "Leaving," I said, calm, quiet, steady. "Why?" They managed to choke it out like the question itself was a shock, as if they hadn't spent months pulling away, as if the distance had been invisible, as if they hadn't handed me the truth in their absence 100 times. "Because you ended this relationship long before I did," I said. They stared at me, mouth opening and closing like they were searching for the right lie, but couldn't find one fast enough. "If this is about work, it's not about work," I interrupted. "It's about you lying. It's about you disappearing. It's about me pretending not to notice." Their face paled, and in that instant, I saw it. The realization that the version of me they depended on, the quiet, tolerating, second-guessing version, was gone. Can we talk? Can we fix this?" "No," I said. "You can't fix something you took apart piece by piece." I walked past them, out the door, into air that felt like freedom and grief and relief, all tangled into one breath. That night, I didn't go to Marcus out of desperation. I went because I needed a place that wasn't filled with lies. I needed someone who understood the particular kind of broken I was. When he opened his door and saw me standing there with my bags, he didn't smirk or celebrate or make a move. He just stepped aside and said, "Come in." And for the first time in months, I stepped somewhere I didn't feel invisible. Staying at Marcus's place wasn't supposed to feel comfortable, but it did in a way that made me uneasy, like my mind couldn't decide if it was relief or danger or some twisted blend of both. His apartment was quiet, minimal, tastefully put together in that way people do when they don't want their living space to betray how chaotic they are on the inside. He'd already set blankets out on the couch, made tea, cleared space for my bags without asking questions. He didn't hover, didn't push, didn't even sit close. He just existed quietly in the room with me, like he understood that my brain was still catching up to the fact that my life had split down the middle and I hadn't figured out what side I landed on yet. I sat on the couch, wrapped in the blanket, staring at nothing, processing everything and nothing all at once. Marcus leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed, watching me with that steady expression he seemed to wear whenever he was thinking too much but didn't want to show it. "You don't have to talk," he said. "You don't owe me anything." "I know," I said quietly, and I did. But that wasn't the problem. The problem was the way the silence between us didn't feel like pressure. It felt like space to breathe. And after months of walking on emotional glass, breathing felt foreign. Eventually, he walked over, sat in the armchair across from me, elbows resting on his knees. "Leaving is the hardest part," he said. "But staying after you know the truth? That's what actually kills people." I didn't respond because the truth hit too cleanly. It made something inside my chest flicker in a painful, honest way. He leaned back. "Do they know you left?" "They saw me packing," I said. "They're probably still trying to figure out which lie to use first." Marcus exhaled through his nose, not a laugh, not annoyance, just understanding. "They'll panic once they realize you're not coming back," he said. "People always do when they lose control." "You're talking from experience?" I asked. His jaw tightened for a second. "Yeah," he said. "When she realized she couldn't manipulate me anymore, suddenly everything became my fault in ways I couldn't have imagined if I tried. Cheaters don't mourn the person, they mourn the power." Those words hit deeper than I wanted to admit. I looked down at the blanket, fingers twisting the edge without realizing it. I feel stupid, I said. You're not stupid, he said immediately, voice firmer than before. You were loyal. They weren't. That's not stupidity. That's character. I didn't know how to respond to that because nobody had defended me in months, not even myself. Later that night, after hours of talking and silence and heavy truths that stung but also steadied something inside me, Marcus walked over to the couch. You should sleep, he said. You've had a long day. I nodded. He handed me a pillow gently, like I was something fragile he didn't want to mishandle. He turned to leave, then paused. I'm in the guest room, he said. Not the bedroom. I'm giving you space. Thank you, I said, and I meant it more than he understood. When he walked away, I felt the air shift in a way I couldn't name. I curled under the blanket, closed my eyes, tried to sleep. But sleep didn't come. Not because of the couch, not because of the unfamiliar environment, because the gravity of everything I'd been ignoring for so long was finally pulling down on me. Around 2 a.m., I gave up. I stood quietly and walked to the small balcony. The city lights bled into the sky and the air was cold enough to sting my skin. I leaned against the railing and let myself feel things I'd been swallowing for months. Betrayal, anger, sadness, confusion, and buried beneath all of it, a spark of something electrifying and terrifying. Freedom. I didn't hear Marcus until he spoke behind me. You okay? I turned slightly. He was standing barefoot, wearing a simple dark shirt. Hair messy from sleep, eyes still soft with exhaustion. Couldn't sleep, I said. Yeah, he said with a tired half smile. I figured. He stepped out onto the balcony, leaned against the railing beside me, but kept a respectful distance. This part, he said quietly, the first night after leaving, it feels like floating, like you're not sure what's real, like your body hasn't realized the war is over yet. I swallowed hard because he was right. I don't know what I'm supposed to do now, I admitted. You don't do anything, he said. Not tonight. Tonight, you just exist. I looked at him. Really looked at him, at the tired eyes, the strong jaw, the quiet sadness that lives somewhere behind his calm exterior. How long have you known? I asked. About them? He didn't flinch. 2 months, he said. I wanted to be wrong. I prayed I was being paranoid, but the truth always shows itself eventually. People who cheat always slip because they think they're smarter than they are. You must hate her, I said. He looked out at the city lights. I don't hate her, he said. I hate what she did. I hate what I let myself become trying to keep her. But hate takes too much energy. I'm tired of giving her anything. I nodded slowly, absorbing his words. We stayed in silence for a long moment, the cold air wrapping around us like a thin layer of honesty neither of us could escape from. Eventually, I asked, Why did you kiss me? He looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. Because you look like someone who needed to feel wanted again, he said. And I needed to feel like I wasn't alone in losing everything. Something in my chest tightened, not painfully, but in a way that felt like something waking up again. Do you regret it? I asked. He shook his head without hesitation. No, he said. Do you? I let out a slow breath. No. The word hung between us like a confession. Then he added, But I won't push you. Not now. Not ever. If anything happens between us, it happens because you want it, not because you're escaping something. That restraint, that control, that patience, it did more damage to me than any kiss could have. It made something inside me unclench after being tense for too long. He stepped back toward the door. You should try to sleep, he said softly. Tomorrow is going to be a long day. I didn't want him to go inside. I didn't want the night to end. I didn't want the cold to be the only thing touching my skin. Stay for a minute, I said quietly. He paused, then stayed, and we stood there together, shoulder to shoulder, but not touching, sharing the silence like two people rebuilding themselves in the quiet pieces of a broken night. The next morning wasn't peaceful. It wasn't calming or clarifying or any of the things people like to pretend fresh starts feel like. It was heavy, thick, suffocating, the kind of morning where the air feels different because the life you used to wake up to doesn't exist anymore. I sat on the edge of Marcus's couch, fully dressed but unmoving, staring at my phone buzzing nonstop with messages I didn't want to read. My partner had called 6 times, left 3 voicemails, and sent a string of texts that swung from confused to apologetic to frantic to manipulative so fast it made my stomach twist. Marcus walked into the living room wearing a hoodie and holding 2 cups of coffee. His hair was messed from sleep, and he looked like he had already accepted the emotional chaos the day would bring. He set a cup in front of me, then sat on the edge of the armchair across from me, elbows on his knees like he was grounding himself. "You don't have to read them yet," he said, "or ever." "I should," I said quietly, though even I didn't know if it was true. "Only if you want to," he said, "not because you think you owe them something." That line got under my skin because for so long I had been operating under the belief that I owed my partner everything: patience, forgiveness, understanding, restraint, self-sacrifice. The idea that I owed them nothing now felt foreign and almost forbidden. And yet, right. My phone buzzed again. I turned it face down. "They're not going to stop," I said. "They will," Marcus replied. "People like that don't know how to stop until they realize they're not getting the reaction they're used to." I let out a slow breath. "I don't know if I'm ready to talk to them." "Then don't," he said simply. "You left for a reason." His steadiness grounded me in ways I wasn't prepared for. But beneath the steadiness was something else too. Worry, maybe? Or restraint? Or both. He was giving me space, but I could feel the tension between us tightening like a wire each time our eyes met and lingered too long. After a quiet moment, Marcus straightened. "I need to go grab some things from my office," he said. "You're welcome to stay here, or I can drop you somewhere, whatever you need." "I'll stay," I said before thinking, because being alone in that apartment felt safer than being anywhere near the place I used to call home. Marcus nodded once, grabbed his keys, hesitated, then said, "If you need anything, call me. I mean that." When he left, the silence in the apartment pressed in on me. I walked around slowly, looking at his space the way people look at someone's handwriting, trying to understand what it said about him. Everything was clean but lived in, nothing decorative without purpose. The kind of place someone makes when they've rebuilt themselves after being broken. I wandered into the guest room where he'd slept the night before. His pillow still had the faint imprint of his head. A shirt was draped over the chair. For a moment I wondered if he had given me the couch because he didn't want me to feel pressured, or because he didn't trust himself to be near me. Both possibilities made something warm flicker in my chest. I walked out to the balcony again. The city looked different in the morning, louder, sharper, less forgiving. I wrapped my arms around myself and exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of everything pressing into my muscles. My phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't my partner. It was an unknown number. I almost ignored it until the preview text flashed. "We need to talk. Now." My stomach dropped. Before I could open the message, someone buzzed the building's front door. Once, twice, then 3 times in a row, aggressive, impatient, unmistakably confrontational. A cold wave ran down my spine. I stepped inside and locked the balcony door like it mattered. My heartbeat thudded in my throat. The buzzer went off again, this time with more insistence, someone leaning on it like they intended to break in through pressure alone. I grabbed my phone and called Marcus. He picked up on the first ring. "What's wrong?" he asked instantly. "Someone's at the door," I whispered. "Who?" "I don't know. They're buzzing nonstop." There was a beat of silence, the kind that comes from someone calculating possibilities. "Is it them?" he asked. My chest tightened. Maybe. Don't open the door, he said firmly. I'm 10 minutes away. Stay inside. Don't talk to them. I'm coming. The buzzer went again, the sound vibrating through the apartment like an alarm. I stepped back from the door even though there were 2 floors between me and whoever was outside. My hands shook, not because I feared for my safety, but because I knew what confrontation would mean. I wasn't ready. I wasn't steady. Not yet. The buzzer finally stopped. For a second, the silence felt worse than the noise. Then my phone vibrated with a new text from the unknown number. You left your things. I think we should talk face to face. Please answer, my partner. Of course it was them. My chest tightened with a complicated mess of anger, sadness, fear, and relief that they weren't storming inside the building somehow. Marcus called again 5 minutes later. I'm outside, he said. I'm coming up. When he arrived, he shut the door behind him and looked at me with an expression that mixed worry and something sharper. Was it them? He asked. I nodded. Marcus's jaw clenched. They don't get to corner you, he said. Not after everything. They want to talk, I whispered. Of course they do, he said. People panic when they lose their grip. I sank onto the couch. I don't want to see them. Then don't, he said again. You're not obligated to comfort the person who broke you. He sat beside me, close but not touching, his presence grounding in a way I didn't know how to explain. After a moment, I asked, What happens now? Marcus exhaled through his nose. Now, he said, you breathe. You let them feel the consequences of their actions, and when you're ready, when you decide, you end it properly. And until then? I asked quietly. He looked at me with a seriousness that made my pulse skip. Until then, he said, you're not alone. The words hit me harder than anything my partner had said in months, and for the first time, I believed them. The day after my partner showed up at Marcus's building felt like living inside a pressure cooker that nobody bothered to turn off. Marcus tried to pretend everything was normal, or at least manageable, but I could see the way his eyes flicked toward the door every time someone passed the hallway, the way his shoulders tensed whenever my phone buzzed. He pretended not to notice how I kept checking over my shoulder, too. We were both on edge, both pretending not to be, both stuck between wanting to move forward and waiting for the inevitable explosion the universe was clearly preparing. He made breakfast, eggs, toast, coffee, simple grounding things. I tried to eat, but my stomach felt twisted, like anxiety had wrapped itself around my organs and refused to loosen. Marcus set his fork down halfway through and looked at me with that quiet intensity he always seemed to fall back on. You don't have to be afraid, he said. I'm not, I lied. He gave me a look that said he saw straight through it. You left someone who never expected you to leave, he said. Of course they're reacting badly. That doesn't mean you owe them anything. I stared at my plate because meeting his eyes felt like letting him read pieces of me I wasn't ready to show. I just don't want a scene, I said. There won't be one, he replied, steady and sure. Not while you're here. Something about the way he said here made my pulse tense. Not fear, not attraction, something in between, something dangerous because it felt safe. Around noon, my partner texted again. Can we talk? Please. I'm outside your place. Marcus, reading over my shoulder without bothering to hide it, muttered, Of course they are. He grabbed his jacket. Stay inside, he said. I'll handle it. No, I said quickly, standing. This is my mess. They don't get to confront you like this, Marcus said. Not after everything. And what? I replied. Hide behind you? He didn't like that. His jaw tightened. You're not hiding behind me, he said. You're protecting your peace. I exhaled sharply. I need to do this. He watched me for a long moment, weighing something heavy behind his eyes, then nodded once. Fine, he said quietly, but I'm coming with you. I didn't argue. Truthfully, the idea of facing my partner without Marcus nearby made my chest feel hollow. We walked to the door. Marcus opened it slowly, scanning the hallway with a guarded expression before motioning me through. My partner stood at the end of the corridor, like someone stuck between outrage and desperation. Their face shifted when they saw Marcus behind me. Some mixture of confusion, jealousy, and disbelief flickered across their expression like static. "Can we talk?" they asked, looking only at me. "Yes," I said. "Outside." We stepped out of the hallway into the chill air. Marcus stayed near the building entrance, arms crossed, posture protective without being aggressive, like he was a barrier only if needed. My partner looked exhausted, eyes red, hair messy, clothes thrown on without care. "You left," they said. "You actually left?" "I did," I replied. My voice didn't shake. That shocked both of us. "Why?" they asked. "Why would you leave without even trying to fix things?" I stared at them, remembering every ignored conversation, every night spent alone, every lie told with confidence. "Because you stopped trying a long time ago," I said. They shook their head. No, we were going through a rough patch. Everyone goes through rough patches." "A rough patch doesn't involve another person," I said. Their face faltered. The truth hung heavy between us. "Who told you something?" they asked suddenly, suspicion sparking in their gaze. "Is that why you're here? Because someone said something?" "I didn't need someone to tell me anything," I replied. "I saw enough myself." They froze for half a second, barely noticeable, but enough to confirm everything. "Listen," they said, lowering their voice. "We can fix this. We can work through this. You don't have to stay here with—" Their eyes flicked toward Marcus like he was a symbol of something they didn't understand. "With him." "Don't," I said. "Don't act like he broke something you didn't." My partner stepped closer. Instinctively, I stepped back. Marcus shifted behind us, subtle but present. "So that's it?" my partner asked. "You're leaving me for some guy you just met?" "I'm leaving you because you left first," I said. "You just didn't have the decency to walk out physically." They swallowed hard. "I made mistakes," they said. "But I love you, and I don't want to lose you." For the first time, I didn't feel that familiar ache in my chest. I didn't feel guilt or pity or the urge to fold into their arms even if they didn't deserve it. I felt done. "You already lost me," I said quietly. Their breath hitched. They reached forward, to grab me or touch me or plead, I don't know. But the second they moved, Marcus stepped forward. Not aggressively, not threateningly, just enough. My partner's eyes narrowed. "Are you serious?" they asked. "You're letting him stand there like he's your bodyguard?" "He's someone who actually shows up," I said. "He's someone who tells the truth. Something you stopped doing months ago." They looked between us, jaw tight, breathing uneven. Then they said, "The one thing I knew was coming." "So that's it? We're done? You'd throw everything away just like that?" "You threw it away," I said. "I'm just finally acknowledging it." Their expression finally broke, not into tears, not into rage, but into something quieter, something like the first moment someone realizes their lies no longer work. "I'll leave your things at your sister's," they muttered. "I don't want to see you again." "Okay," I said. They turned and walked away quickly, shoulders rigid, head down, pretending they weren't falling apart. I didn't watch them go. I turned back toward Marcus, who was still standing exactly where he'd been, arms crossed, posture steady, eyes on me like he was checking if I needed him to catch me before I hit the ground. "You okay?" he asked quietly. I didn't trust my voice, so I nodded. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You handled that better than you think." I exhaled shakily. "It hurts." "Of course it does," he said. "You're human. You cared. But pain isn't the same as regret." I looked up at him. "Do you think I'll regret leaving?" He shook his head once, slow and certain. "No," he said, "I think you'll regret not leaving sooner." And for the first time since this whole nightmare started, I believed him. The hours after my partner walked away should have felt relieving, like crossing a finish line that had been miles overdue, but instead they felt strangely suspended, like the world had paused in the middle of a deep inhale and hadn't exhaled yet. Marcus and I walked back upstairs without speaking. He didn't touch me, didn't crowd me, didn't ask questions. He just walked half a step behind me like a silent safety net, ready to catch me if my legs gave out. When the apartment door closed, a heavy quiet fell between us. Not uncomfortable, just thick, like the air needed time to settle after everything that had just happened. I sat on the couch and let out a breath I didn't even realize I'd been holding. Marcus stayed standing for a moment, then crouched down in front of me, elbows on his knees, eyes searching my face like he was taking inventory of every emotion I was too worn out to name. "Say something," he murmured. "Anything." "I feel empty," I said. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't poetic. It was just true. "That happens," he replied softly. "When you finally stop carrying the weight of someone else's chaos, your body doesn't know what to do with the sudden quiet." I nodded slowly. He stood up and sat beside me, not touching, but close enough that I felt the steadiness radiating off him. "You should rest," he said. "You've been running on adrenaline for days." "I won't sleep," I whispered. "You will," he said quietly. "Eventually." He turned on the TV, low volume, random documentary playing, something with calm narration and soothing colors. Not to distract me, but to fill the silence so it didn't swallow me whole. Hours passed like that, me staring at nothing, him flipping channels absent-mindedly, the tension in the room shifting from sharp to muted. Eventually I said, "You don't have to babysit me." "I know," he said, "but I'm not leaving you alone today." His certainty caught something in my throat. "Why?" I asked, voice barely above a breath. "Because I know what it looks like," he said. "The first day after the breakup, that wasn't your choice. The first day after betrayal stops being suspicion and becomes fact." He paused. "The silence is the part that hurts the most." I swallowed hard because he was right. Silence forces you to hear thoughts you've been avoiding. Silence forces you to face yourself. And I hadn't faced myself in a long time. "What did you do on your first day?" I asked. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling for a moment before answering. "I broke," he said simply. "Not all at once. In waves. I'd feel okay for 10 minutes, then the weight would hit again." He turned his head toward me. "But I didn't have anyone with me. You do." Something warm, fragile, and dangerous stirred under my ribs, the kind of warmth that made my pulse shift. "Mark," I said quietly. He shook his head before I could finish. "I'm not asking for anything," he said. "I'm not expecting anything. I'm just here." And somehow that made my chest ache sharper than anything else. The day dragged. My phone buzzed occasionally, mostly unread messages from my partner shifting between apology, defensiveness, and subtle guilt-tripping tones. Marcus didn't tell me to block them. He didn't tell me what choice to make. Every time my phone buzzed, he just looked at me and said, "Your decision, your pace." That was the difference. He didn't take control. He gave it back to me. By late afternoon, the exhaustion finally settled deep enough that my eyes felt heavy. I laid down on the couch. Marcus stood, grabbed an extra blanket, and covered me with it gently, careful not to brush my skin too much. "Rest," he said softly. "I'll be right here." "You don't have to stay," I murmured. "I know," he said. "I'm still staying." I drifted in and out of sleep. Each time I stirred, I heard the quiet sounds of Marcus moving around the apartment. The soft click of the kettle, the faint scrape of pages turning in a book, the shift of couch cushions when he sat beside me but gave me space. It was strange how safe that presence felt. Not romantic, not desperate, just safe. When I woke fully, it was evening. The room was dim. The TV was still on, volume almost inaudible. Marcus was on the floor, leaning back against the couch, scrolling through something on his phone. He glanced up when he noticed I was awake. "Hey," he said quietly. "How do you feel?" "Like a person who hasn't slept in a month," I muttered. He gave a tired half smile. "That sounds about right." I sat up slowly. He didn't move closer, didn't ask questions, just waited. "What now?" I asked softly. "Now," he said. "You figure out what you want your life to look like without them in it. That's the hard part, but it's also the part where everything starts to feel real again." I stared at my hands. "I don't know what I want." "You will," he said. "One decision at a time." "What about you?" I asked. He blinked, surprised by the shift. "What do you mean? What do you want?" He opened his mouth, then closed it, took a slow breath, then said, "I want peace. I want honesty. I want to stop bleeding for people who don't deserve it." He looked at me, really looked, eyes steady, calm, intense. "And right now, I want to help you find your footing. Nothing more, nothing less." Something in me softened in a way that scared me. I looked away before it showed on my face. After a moment, Marcus stood and held out a hand. "Come on," he said. "Let's get some air." "Where?" "Anywhere," he said. "Anywhere that isn't stuck in your head." We walked outside. The air was crisp, the streets quieter than usual. We walked side by side, not touching, but aware of each other like gravity. "Do you regret kissing me?" I asked abruptly, the question spilling out before I could swallow it. Marcus stopped walking, slowly turned to me. His expression didn't shift, not shock, not guilt, not excitement, just calm truth. "No," he said, "not for a second." My heart thudded once, hard. "Do you?" he asked. I swallowed. "No." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was charged. Heavy, like a decision waiting to be made. "But," he said softly, "I meant what I told you before. Nothing happens unless you want it, unless you're ready." "And if I never am?" I asked. He stepped closer, not touching me, just close enough that I felt the heat from his body, the tension under his breath. "Then I'll still be here," he said quietly, "as long as you need." And that, more than anything else, was the reason I trusted him. He wanted me, but he didn't need me. He wasn't clinging. He wasn't controlling. He wasn't using me to fill some wound. He just saw me, maybe too clearly, and didn't run. And for the first time, the idea of letting someone stay didn't feel dangerous. It felt possible. The next morning felt different, not lighter, not happier, but steadier, like the emotional freefall had slowed just enough for my mind to start piecing itself back together. Marcus was already awake, sitting at the kitchen counter with a mug of coffee and his laptop open, looking focused but tired. Not the kind of tired that comes from lack of sleep, the kind that comes from carrying someone else's heartbreak alongside your own. When he noticed me in the doorway, he closed the laptop immediately, like whatever he was working on could wait if I needed something. "Morning," he said quietly. "You hungry?" "A little," I admitted. He nodded and started making breakfast without asking for specifics, without fussing, without hovering. He just moved around the kitchen with a quiet calmness that eased something inside me. "You don't have to take care of me," I said, leaning against the counter. "I know," he said. "I'm doing it because I want to." The honesty in his voice made me look away for a second. I wasn't used to being wanted without expectations attached. When we finally sat down to eat, the silence between us wasn't heavy. It was thoughtful, like we were both adjusting to a new rhythm we hadn't realized we were already falling into. Halfway through breakfast, my phone buzzed. I didn't need to check it to know who it was. Marcus watched my eyes flick toward the device, then said gently, "You don't have to respond." "I know," I said, "but part of me feels like I should just finish it, make it official." Then that's what you'll do, he said, when you're ready. After breakfast, I sat on the couch and finally opened the messages. My partner had shifted from pleading to bargaining to anger and now landed somewhere in between. I deserve the chance to explain. We can fix this. I'm sorry. I messed up. Can we just talk? Face to face? I reread them with a strange detachment, like I was looking at someone else's life from a distance. Marcus sat across the room, watching me quietly, not pressuring, not intruding. I think I need to see them, I said finally. His jaw tightened a little. If that's what you want, he said carefully. Not want, I corrected. Need. I need closure. He nodded slowly. Where? Somewhere public, I said. I don't trust the way they react when they panic. Then I'll come with you, he said, not asking, not guessing, stating. I met his eyes. I don't want them thinking I'm using you as a shield. You're not, he said. But that doesn't mean you have to face them alone. His voice was steady, but something in his jaw hinted at tension he wasn't voicing. We agreed to meet my partner at a quiet coffee shop a few blocks away. The walk there felt unreal, like I was approaching the final scene of a life I had outgrown, but still needed to close properly. Marcus walked beside me, close enough to support me without guiding me, giving me space but staying near enough that I felt anchored. When we reached the shop, he stopped outside. I'll be right here, he said. Take as long as you need. For a moment, I wanted him inside with me, wanted him at my back, wanted the steadiness he carried in every breath, but I also knew I needed to face this myself. I'll come back out when I'm done, I said softly. He nodded once, expression unreadable, and leaned against the building with his hands in his pockets. I walked inside. My partner was already seated, hands wrapped tightly around a coffee cup. Their eyes darted up when I entered, relief flooding their face so fast it almost hurt to see. You came, they said. Of course I came, I replied. You wanted to talk. They nodded, swallowing hard. I'm sorry, they said immediately. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I am. I'm sorry for hurting you. I'm sorry for everything I did. I don't know what I was thinking. I sat across from them, listening. I made a mistake, they continued, a stupid one, and I regret it every second. You didn't deserve what I did. You've always been good to me. You've always been patient, and I took advantage of that. I stayed silent because apologies didn't erase actions. They kept talking about stress, confusion, loneliness, excuses that weren't excuses. But for once, the emotional manipulation didn't land. Their words washed over me like background noise. When they finally stopped, waiting desperately for a reaction, I spoke. I'm not coming back, I said. The sentence landed like a blade. Their eyes widened, breath-catching. No, they said. No, we can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can start over. I'll do anything. Anything you want. I shook my head slowly. You didn't lose me yesterday, I said. You lost me months ago. Yesterday was just the first time I stopped pretending. They leaned forward. Please, they whispered. I love you. I didn't respond at first. My throat tightened, because hearing that word from the person who betrayed it felt like being stabbed with something dull. Love isn't a feeling, I said. It's a choice, and you stopped choosing me long before I walked out that door. Their face crumpled. They tried to reach for my hand, but I pulled back. Don't, I said. The finality in my voice surprised both of us. They swallowed hard, tears forming in the corners of their eyes. So that's it, they whispered. It's over? I nodded. Yes. They lowered their head, shoulders shaking. I didn't comfort them. I didn't soften. I didn't undo their consequences. I stood up. Take care of yourself, I said quietly. Goodbye. I walked out of the cafe without looking back. The cold air hit me like a second awakening. Marcus straightened instantly when he saw me approaching, scanning my face, reading everything I didn't say. It's done? He asked. It's done, I confirmed. He nodded once, slow, steady. How do you feel? I exhaled a shaky breath. Free, I said. Terrified, but free. Good, he murmured. Then, carefully, deliberately, he reached out and brushed his hand against mine, not grabbing, not assuming, just offering. And for the first time, I reached back. The walk back to Marcus's apartment felt strangely calm, like the storm I'd been living in for months had finally burned itself out. He didn't push me to talk, didn't ask for explanations, didn't pry. He just walked beside me like he'd been doing it for years. When we got inside, I sat on the couch, staring at nothing, finally letting myself exist without pretending. Marcus asked quietly, "Do you want to talk or do you want distraction?" I told him distraction, and he understood immediately. He handed me a drink, sat beside me, and we talked about everything that had nothing to do with my ex. Movies, childhood disasters, food we wanted to try, the kind of dog he swore he'd get one day. For the first time in years, existing didn't feel heavy. Eventually, exhaustion hit me harder than I expected. Marcus noticed before I said anything. "Lie down," he whispered. I rested my head on his chest, and he wrapped an arm around me. It wasn't romantic or intense. It was grounding. I slept better that night than I had in years. The next morning was the real beginning. Life after goodbye. Marcus made breakfast again, but I pushed him aside and took over. "You cook every day," I said. "Let me." He leaned against the counter, watching me with an expression I wasn't used to seeing. Proud, relieved, something quietly hopeful. Over breakfast, he asked, "So what now?" I told him now I rebuild. He nodded. "Whatever that looks like, I'm here." I didn't know what to do with how steady he was, but I didn't pull away. The following weeks were messy. Mutual friends found out. People chose sides. My ex tried reaching out, but I blocked them. Therapy was brutal but necessary. Some nights I cried. Some nights I was numb. Some nights I was angry at everything. But through all of it, I never regretted leaving. And Marcus stayed steady the entire time. If I needed space, he gave it. If I needed company, he showed up. If I needed silence, he stayed quiet. He didn't try to fix me. He just made room for me to fix myself. The shift happened 3 months later, on a quiet Sunday morning. I was on the floor going through old journals when Marcus brought me coffee. He started reading random passages over my shoulder, laughing at the embarrassing teenage melodrama inside them. I tried grabbing the journal away. He held it above his head. I climbed into his lap to reach it, both of us laughing like idiots. Then everything stopped. He looked at me, not like he liked me, not like he wanted me, but like he actually saw me. "You deserve good things," he said softly. Something in my chest cracked open. "I'm trying to believe that." "Do you believe this?" he asked, motioning between us. I hesitated for half a breath. "Yeah," I whispered. "I do." He kissed me. Not chaotic like the first time. Slow, intentional. The kind of a kiss you only give someone when you're choosing them. I kissed him back with the same decision. After that, things weren't fragile anymore. We slid into a pattern that felt natural. Dinners together, sleeping in the same bed, sharing space without feeling like we were crowding each other. He didn't replace what broke. He helped me build something new. A year later, he asked to meet my parents. We drove to Spokane for Thanksgiving. My mom had been skeptical at first, but watching Marcus carry groceries, ask questions, laugh with my dad, talk softly to my mom in the kitchen, she melted. My dad pulled me aside later and said, "You look like yourself again." I didn't realize how long I'd been pretending until that moment. On the drive home, Marcus said, "I was worried they'd only see how everything started." "You mean the chaos," I said. He nodded. "But they saw what we've become instead." 6 months after that, he asked me to move in. Not out of convenience. He made that clear. "I can't imagine waking up anywhere else without you," he said. So I moved into his loft. We painted, rearranged, combined our lives like it was the most obvious thing in the world. One night, while unpacking, he wrapped his arms around me and whispered, Thank you for saying yes that first day. I told him it was the best decision I ever made. 2 years. After the Starbucks encounter, he took me to the pier where we shared our first kiss. The sky looked exactly the same. Dark water, bright city. He took my hands, told me how meeting me blew up his life in the best possible way, then dropped to one knee. I didn't even let him finish the question before I said yes. We married 6 months later in a botanical garden. Small ceremony, just the people who mattered. Rebecca cried through all of it. Marcus's parents hugged me like I'd always been theirs. The whole thing felt like the opposite of my first marriage. Not performative, not polished, not built on image. It felt real. During our first dance, Marcus whispered, "What are you thinking?" I told him the truth, that nothing about my life went the way I planned, and I wouldn't change any of it. After the reception, as we left hand in hand, I thought about my ex for the last time. Not with anger, not with sadness, just with quiet acceptance. They made their choices. I made mine. And choosing myself led me here, to someone who chose me back. The life I didn't expect became the life I actually wanted. The life that started with 6 words from a stranger sitting beside me in a coffee shop. The worst moment of my life ended up becoming the beginning of the best one.